Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show on this last day of 2021. It's New Year's Eve, December 31st. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service, and wishing you certainly the best of the holidays, safety and health. Let's take a look at, if you'd like additional information as to on top of what I provide you with, you can always go to weather.gov. and it will bring up a map of the continental U.S. as well as with Alaska and Hawaii in the lower left. If you click on those maps, they are interactive and they allow you to focus in on a particular location. So if you want information about Alaska, you can check it out there, or Hawaii, or say you want to follow up on some weather conditions for family or friends in other parts of the country, you can check it out by doing that. Well, here is the current, I should say not current, but some web camera images that were available this mid-afternoon. Isabel Pass there, blizzard warning is in effect for later tonight through the day on Saturday and into early Sunday. There are going to be some strong winds set up along the Alaska Range, gusting at times over 60 miles an hour, and any snow is going to blow and drift around in addition to any snow that's already on the ground. Another area that's under a winter weather type advisory is Ketchikan. It has a winter storm warning in effect, and that's going to be going in effect here for tonight and into the day on Saturday. Several inches of snow on the way for much of the Panhandle. As we have a low pressure out over the Gulf, it's throwing a frontal system right up into the Panhandle, and that's going to bring a 1-2 punch of some snow. And then once that moves out of the Panhandle, we're going to see stronger winds set in the north end of the Panhandle, including Juneau and up around Skagway. You could see some rather strong winds, especially Saturday night through the day on Sunday into Sunday night. And looking at the current advisory warning map, the areas in red are warnings, winter storm warnings for much of the Panhandle, Yakutat down through Juneau and Ketchikan. Sitka on the outer coast there to Craig, those are winter weather advisories, so the snow amounts won't be quite as much because there's probably going to be some mixing in of rain. But this low that's out kind of over the northwestern portion of the Gulf is going to get a little better organized overnight and into the day on Saturday. In addition, we got a high pressure up building in from the Chukchi Sea off the Russian coast, and as that moves into the northern parts of the state, it's going to build up to over 1050 millibar high here by later this weekend. That's going to increase the pressure gradient between that low over the Gulf and the high to the north, and we're going to see some rather strong winds set up over the Alaska Range. Blizzard conditions there, the eastern half of the Alaska Range around Isabel Pass could see gusts up to 65 miles an hour, blowing and drifting snow, so travel will be very hazardous there, crossing up through some of the passes of the Alaska Range. And then up through, as we get into Fairbanks, that area there will see a winter weather advisory through Saturday, as we're going to have those stronger winds along with some lighter snow blowing and drifting and wind chills that'll be very cold, easily down in the 40-50 below range. Further north, the eastern half of the Brooks Range and the North Slope has a wind chill warning, and wind chills there could be as cold as 50 to 60 below. Kaktovik, that's a wind chill advisory, so not quite as windy or quite as cold of wind chills. And then also the area along the west coast there from Point Hope south to just northwest of Kotzebue, and also along the northern and western coastline there of the Seward Peninsula, as well as St. Lawrence Island, are also under wind chill advisories through at least Saturday morning. Further south, southwestern Alaska, including Bristol Bay, Dillingham, King Salmon, will be under a wind chill advisory as we get into Saturday evening into Sunday. And then area there just north of Anchorage, the Matanuska Valley is under a high wind warning, and that would be in effect for Saturday into Sunday as those stronger winds begin to develop as the low begins to drift southeastward out of the Gulf and it allows that tighter pressure gradient along the Alaska range to push a little further south. Same mechanism that's going to get Juneau and Skagway the stronger winds Saturday night into Sunday night. Well, what's up in the sky? Well, the northern lights, the aurora, have been rather quiet. We'll see mainly quiet auroras. You still may see auroras where skies are clear, but they're just not going to be real active or colorful. The new moon does occur on Sunday, January 2nd, so the skies will be good and dark. And the only other thing of note is the quadrantid meteor shower occurs. It peaks Monday morning prior to daybreak. So say get out 6 a.m., take a look up in the northeastern sky, and kind of the radiant, the point from which the meteors emanate from, will be between the Big Dipper and Arcturus. So something to keep an eye out for here if you're a sky watcher. And skies are clear Monday morning, but it'll be darn cold because we have the Arctic air that's going to overspread the state again. Here we can see the cloud cover, satellite imagery, a lot of cloud cover, plume of moisture coming up through the Gulf, and that is what's taking aim at the Panhandle, and that's why there are the winter storm warnings in effect for tonight and in through the day Saturday. The bulk of the snow, though, coming tonight into Saturday morning, and then that will begin to drift off toward the southeast. So here's the low. There's one low right now out over the northwestern Gulf, just off of the Kenai Peninsula, and then another secondary low that's back out through the central Alaska Peninsula, just off the coast there on the North Pacific side. That's the piece of energy that's going to kind of wrap around and invigorate the system, plus the fronts that are coming on shore. They are in through the Panhandle. So again, expect the bulk of the snow in the Panhandle tonight, into Saturday morning, tapering off Saturday afternoon. On the backside of the low, strong winds across the Alaska range, and those will be increasing throughout the day on Saturday and spreading further south down into the Matanuska Valley and even into the eastern hills of Anchorage, or up around the mountains surrounding Eagle River. So keep that in mind. And then the high pressure is going to continue to build in from out of eastern Russia as we go through the weekend. That low gets a little better organized overnight. And then look at the way the isobars, those lines are packed together out over the southern portion of Alaska. That is what's going to be causing the strong winds, the pressure gradient between the low in the Gulf and this building Arctic high coming in out of the Chukchi Sea in eastern Russia. And by Sunday afternoon, that high will be up over 1050 millibars and continuing to strengthen. In fact, it will slowly build southeastward into the Yukon through the early and middle part of next week. Some forecast models want to try and get it up around 1060 millibars. So that would be one of the strongest Arctic highs we've seen so far this winter. Low temperatures Saturday morning below freezing across the inner channels there of the Panhandle. You can see some sub-zero readings there. You get north of Valdez and Anchorage. And then high temperatures Saturday afternoon are not going anywhere. South central interior, especially south of the Alaska range, may get temperatures briefly in the upper 30s to near 40 on the outer coast there of the Panhandle in the southern southwestern parts there. Otherwise, colder air is coming in from the north. Look at Sunday morning, 30 below at McGrath, 16 below there at Glen Allen, getting down near zero even toward Anchorage, at least Eagle River, and then areas dropping below freezing there into the Panhandle. And high temperatures Sunday afternoon will continue to a downward trend across south central interior, and the Panhandle still may see a few readings near just above freezing on the outer fringes there of the south. And across the north, notice the cold air building. These are low temperatures for Saturday morning, but we're going to start to see some readings as we get into Sunday morning in the 40s below. So those are daytime highs for Saturday, so quite a bit colder than what we enjoyed the previous week up around and before Christmas time. We're seeing now that cold air pushing southward again, and then widespread temperatures in the 30s and 40s below here Sunday morning as well as Monday morning. In fact, some of the normally cold spots could be down near 50 below. And there are the high temperatures Sunday afternoon in the 20s and to near 30 below there through much of the Yukon Valley. Cold is also going to be kind of backdooring in from northeast to southwest across the southwest interior. For Saturday afternoon, we'll have highs slipping below zero there and through the interior. You have to get out into the Aleutians to get temperatures now back up above freezing. If you recall, we had temperatures last week in the 60s. It was pretty crazy there with that surge of warmer air with a ridge that came up along the Alaska Peninsula and through Kodiak Island, establishing that record all-time high. And then as we get into Sunday afternoon temperatures there, below zero across the interior of the southwest, and then near or above freezing as you get out through the Aleutians. Temperatures are going to stay below normal across at least southeast Alaska here for the early part of 2022, and precipitation will average below normal, especially in the west.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, it's now time for your flying weather, and if you are planning a flight over the New Year's holiday weekend, be aware of a couple of weather features and areas. We have low pressure out over the northern Gulf. This feature is going to slowly weaken and drift southeastward through the course of the weekend, but initially, there are winter storm conditions there across the Panhandle for some areas of heavier snow that'll be working their way southeastward on Saturday. And then we have areas of IFR up there along the Arctic coast to start Saturday morning. We're going to be watching Arctic high pressure strengthening there up along the North Slope, Brooks Range, and that feature will gradually slide southeastward and build to a 1060 high by early middle part of next week as it moves into the Yukon. Looking ahead into the day, Saturday afternoon, still IFR conditions across much of the Panhandle. Pockets there along the Alcan border, eastern Alaska Range, and up there along the North Slope and Arctic coast. Sunday morning, still persistent area of IFR conditions across parts of the North Slope and Arctic coast, and then also down there along at least still southern part of the Panhandle, Central Gulf, and then back out into the western Aleutians. And Sunday afternoon, still IFR conditions will hold over portions of the Gulf as well as along the North Slope, Arctic coast, and back out through the western Aleutians. Pass conditions for Saturday for Anativik Pass, look for a split. IFR conditions there, north entrance and on up through the North Slope, but MVFR southern half and flying south there of the south entrance. Same thing for Adigan Pass. You will encounter IFR conditions as you get up there toward the north entrance and up there through the North Slope, but MVFR conditions there around the south entrance. And further south and west, it's a split there at Lake Clark and Merrill. On the west side of these passes, the west entrances MVFR, but VFR on the east side, the east entrances toward Cook Inlet. As we come up rounding the Alaska Range, Rainy Pass will generally be MVFR Saturday, as will Windy Pass. Further east, Isabel will also be MVFR with IFR conditions as you fly further north and northeast from the north entrance. And then Mentasta should generally hold on to IFR conditions during the day Saturday. Further south and west, Tanita, MVFR conditions are anticipated through that pass. And Portage Pass should generally be able to see VFR conditions hold there for the day on Saturday. And of course, as earlier mentioned, the Panhandle socked in with those winter conditions. Chilkoot and White will see IFR throughout Saturday. As far as freezing levels go, there is a little bump in them, upwards to 2,000 and 4,000 feet across the southwest Panhandle into Haida Kauai. Ahead of that, as a frontal system works its way through there. And then back to the west, the central western Aleutians will see a bump upwards to 4,000 and 6,000 foot freezing levels, with the surface freezing level south of the Alaska Peninsula and out over the northern Gulf back through the central Bering Sea. Greatest threat for icing Saturday will be down there across the Panhandle. An area of snow that morning will be working southeastward and continue to linger there through the southern part of the Panhandle into Saturday afternoon. So greatest threat of icing there between 4,000 and 14,000 feet. There is also an area of icing between 4,000 and 14,000 feet out over the western Bering, and also 1,000 to 10,000 feet there along the northern Gulf Coast. Strongest jet stream level winds southwesterly there coming onshore into British Columbia upwards to 130 knots. On the backside, we have winds from the north and northwest from upwards to 145 knots centered on Nunavik Island down across the Alaska Peninsula. And as we drop down to the 9,000 foot mid-level winds, we see strong winds across the southwest portion of the mainland, especially just along and on the west side of the Alaska Range, and especially across the Alaska Peninsula. And then for the 3,000 foot winds, we definitely have the strongest winds across southwest parts of the state that creep up through the Kuskokwim River basin, and then down across the Alaska Peninsula, where winds are upwards to 70 knots. Another area also out there through the western Aleutians. So the greatest threat of turbulence Saturday, severe turbulence, will be along and west of the Alaska Range as you come down along the Kuskokwim and lower Yukon River basins, and then out over the southwest coast, Bristol Bay, including much of the Alaska Peninsula, surface to 4,000 feet, and then another area out there through the western part of the Aleutians between the surface and 3,000 feet could also see some isolated severe turbulence. So if you are planning a flight, be sure to check the latest conditions and forecast, and I wish you a safe flight and Happy New Year.
Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us once again is our good friend Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. He is here and has been here many times to talk to us about weather satellites and how those can help Alaskans understand our weather, how we can do better detection, keep more people safe from things even like volcanic ash. But today, Eric, you're going to talk to us a little bit more about weather satellites and how that can keep Alaskans safe and protect our property from wildfire, right?
That's right, Dave. Today's topic is where there's smoke, there's fire. And thanks for having us back again to Alaska
Anytime.
Weather. Well, weather satellites have a lot of different instruments on them. It turns out that the electromagnetic spectrum has a lot going on in it, and only one part of that is visible light, what we see.
Right.
Weather satellites, of course, report that. Today's topic is wildfires.
Okay.
There are some people who say that in Alaska in the summertime you don't have severe weather. These people are usually from Oklahoma or somewhere, and F5 tornadoes tend not to occur in Alaska.
Right.
People have also said what we do have in the summer. What is Alaska's severe summer weather can be hydrology,
Right.
flash flood and erosion in the mountains and things like that, and fires, wildfires.
Absolutely.
Those were here in 2004, certainly remember that. We've got an example here from 2014. Now it was a quiet season overall, but in May, down on the Kenai Peninsula, we had a wildfire on the Funny River, and this is a satellite image from a polar orbiter that went right over Alaska, and we can see the plume of smoke coming out of that fire on the Kenai, curling down. It's caught in the wind.
Right.
It goes down toward Kodiak Island, curves around. You can see it circulating around a low pressure system that's in the Gulf of Alaska.
It was a beautiful picture.
Oh my gosh.
Except there was a fire.
There's a fire there. The nice thing is with this satellite image, you can tell where the fire origin is, where the smoke is coming from. And it's a color image. We're looking at the wavelength spectrum of about 0.4 to 0.7 micrometers or microns. That's what the human eye would see. If you were riding on the satellite and looked down, you could see this kind of an image.
Right.
So that's pretty nice. But it turns out there's more to the electromagnetic spectrum than just visible light.
Okay.
You've heard of infrared, ultraviolet, that kind of thing. If we move into longer wavelengths, let's go to one specifically, 3.7 micron.
Okay, 3.7.
Why worry about that one?
Okay.
Well, we've got an example here. 3.7, it turns out, happens to be very sensitive to a certain temperature range, temperatures where fires burn.
Okay.
And so we've got an example zoomed in a little more from that same Funny River fire down on the Kenai Peninsula, and we can see that you get up into a few hundred degrees Fahrenheit, and that's where the colors are. We can see there on the Funny River fire to the west and to the east, almost a horseshoe shape there, is not only we're seeing where the fire is in a general sense, but specifically where it's the active fire
That is where
front.
it's burning right now.
And it's
Amazing.
3.7 microns is the important temperature there.
Okay.
That's right.
So this is really important to firefighters on the ground, people that are making plans and directing the firefighters on where they need to go and cut the trenches and keep people safe.
You know it. If you want to fight that fire, you got to know where it is.
Okay.
You got to know the leading edge. We've also got a movie loop, nothing quite like animating it in time.
Yeah.
You can see the fire spreading out over time with a succession of film or succession of images. Now this is one channel, 3.7 micron. You know, we looked at that color smoke image before.
Right.
And that's actually a red, a green, and a blue. That's how you get color imagery. What if you took 3 different wavelengths in the infrared? You went from like 2.2 micron, 1.5 micron, up to 3.7. You mix them together, you get this other kind of color image, which is even a better way to sharply bring out the details of where that leading edge of the fire is.
Okay.
You'll note, though, in the infrared, guess what? We don't see the smoke. That's too bad. And on these movie loops, you can see the clouds go by. These channels can't see through clouds. The lesson is there's no one perfect solution. You got to have the visible, you got to have some of that infrared single 3.7 channel, some of the infrared mixing to help get a different perspective. Another one, we've talked before about a fun channel called the Day-Night Band.
Yes, one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, and in Alaska in the winter, it's great. We've got all this darkness. The Day-Night Band is so sensitive to seeing light. You can see features that otherwise aren't available. Now in Alaska, when you have a forest fire, it tends to be light out all the time.
Right.
It's our summer. But we can go down south to the Rim Fire in California in 2013. Now, okay, it was in California, not Alaska, but Alaskan crews went down to fight that fire, so we can talk about it here on Alaska Weather. Here we have a 3.7 micron channel shot of the rim fire, again kind of a horseshoe shape showing that active fire front down there, and then we'll look again to the day-night band, the visible light, and then you can see how the fire is all bright. You can see the active fire front and actually the city lights over there too. Turns out that the cities, while they're active in a social sense, are not really hot in a fire sense. So they don't show up in the 3.7 micron. They're not hot like a fire is, but the fire in the cities look the same from a visible light perspective. And a fun thing here too is that we can see the smoke plume going north from the rim fire on the day-night band. So if we were ever to have, like in 2004 in Alaska, you get dark at night, we still had an active fire season that year.
Right.
That was, you know, that really bad year. The day-night band didn't exist then, but if we had fires now in August, we could use it then. The lesson here is weather satellites, they offer many different wavelengths of light. Some are used for different purposes, and some of these that we just looked at tonight are especially helpful here in Alaska to find and to track the behavior of these wildfires so the crews can go out there and do their jobs.
Sure, sure. So a satellite toolbox for the firefighting crews and the fire weather forecasters, and it just underlines how important satellites are, especially for Alaska and our mission for the National Weather Service to protect life and property, and also to enhance the national economy. So wonderful stuff there, Eric. And people can look at pictures like this anytime by going to gina.alaska.edu. You'll find images there all around Alaska at various times of the year, and not just about fire weather, but volcanic ash and smoke and anything else you want to check out. They're always beautiful pictures and always interesting to look at no matter what time of the day. Thanks again for joining us, Eric. We appreciate it and welcome you back anytime. For this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder. See you next time. And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Now it's time to look at the sea ice edge. Well, if you recall last week, actually the past couple of weeks, we've had a lot of systems bringing south and southwest winds compressing the ice along the western coastline. Now it's going to reverse. We have low pressure out over the Gulf, a big Arctic high building into the northern parts of the state, and that's going to turn winds along the west coast more out of the north and northeast. So that's going to allow the ice to advance southward here in the early days of 2022. But looking at the southeast panhandle, we got some winds going to be coming in there. Front is working its way in with the low pressure out over the Gulf, snow, wind. Generally, though, only in the 15 to 25 knot range, the inner channels, some gusts from the southeast to 35 knots there, Metlakatla and Ketchikan. Along the outer Gulf Coast, winds generally out of the southwest 25 knots, but as we get into Sunday, that low pressure over the northern Gulf is going to drift southeastward toward the North Pacific, and this is going to allow the pressure gradient to tighten up across the region. We're looking at winds out of the north there, 50 knots, higher gusts possible, especially the central and northern inner channels. And along the Gulf Coast, winds upwards to 45 knots there out of Sitka, Gustavus, Yakutat, with waves building into the 15 to near 20-foot range. Across south central areas, winds are going to be picking up on the backside of that low out of the north, and we're going to see winds in the 40 to 45 knot range common, but some higher gusts, 55 knots there out of the north off the Kenai Peninsula in the northwestern Gulf, as well as upwards to 65 knots and 20-foot waves at the mouth of Cook Inlet. And on Sunday, winds will come down a little bit, but still we're looking at overall 35 to 40 knot gales, but stronger winds through the lower Cook Inlet where there's still open water, 50 knot northwest to north winds and waves upwards around 15 feet. For the Kodiak Island and Alaska Peninsula, strong winds there as well, 60 knots from the northwest, Shelikof Strait, 65 knots there south of Kodiak Island and off of Chiknik, with waves as you get offshore, they're building upwards to 25 feet. On the Bering side, winds will be out of the northwest to 45 knots, waves 10 to 16 feet. And then on Sunday, the winds across the region turn more northerly and we're going to still see some storm force winds in the 50 to 55 knot range there along the North Pacific and Western Gulf, with waves anywhere from around 15 to over 20 feet. Less so there, Bristol Bay down toward Cold Bay, 35 to 40 knot winds out of the north. Across the Aleutian chain, winds will initially go to the east there as you get west from Nikolsky westward for Atka at 20 to 30 knots, and then shift southeasterly ahead of another frontal system in low that's way southwest of the Aleutian chain, 40 to 45 knots. And on Sunday, we're going to see winds also through the eastern and central Aleutians turning from the northeast and east at 30 to 40 knots, picking up to 45 to 50 knots AKwx westward, with waves out there in the western Aleutians building on the order of 22 to 28 feet. Across the west coast, winds pick up out of the north, the open waters there south of Nunavik Island, 40 knot winds, waves upwards to 11 feet. Northwest winds 50 knots with ice there in Norton Sound. And then Sunday, winds will be out of the northeast, generally 15 to 20 knots over the ice, but still upwards to 40 knots there off of the southwest coast, with waves near 10 feet. Along the Arctic coast, winds will be turning northerly, especially Prudhoe Bay westward to down through the lower Chukchi Sea, around 15 knots, and picking up to 25 knots through the Bering Strait. And then on Sunday, winds will be more westerly, Prudhoe Bay to Katovik, and then out toward the west they become offshore there, Wainwright down toward Cape Lisburn at only 10 knots and 5 to 15 knots through the Bering Strait. So here is that low overnight early New Year's Day over the north central Gulf. That will bring the snow, snowing pretty hard overnight into Saturday morning there in the Panhandle, and then the low begins to drift slowly southeastward. And look at the pressure gradient tightening there along and south of the Alaska Range. So we're going to see some strong winds across south central portions of the state, and then getting down into the northern Panhandle Saturday night into Sunday. So beware of that as winds could gust in excess of 50 knots or over 60 miles an hour. Otherwise, that high pressure is going to be the main weather player going into the early new year. I want to wish everyone a happy new year, and I'll be back tomorrow.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.